making a quintessentially British dish, vegetable pasties. Pasties were very popular in Cornwall and in northern England for miners and workers, and now everybody loves them. And so you're going to be making your very own today. Now we'll start out with short crust pastry, and I've made a separate video to show you how to make that. You can buy it, of course, but it'll be much better if you use some that you've made yourself. So go and watch the other video if you haven't made it, and then come back. These are all of the ingredients that you should need to make a homemade vegetable pasty. But this is about 300 grams of short crust pastry. You can buy it if you're a heathen, or you can make your own from home like I always do. You need 60 grams of butter. You need an onion, which we're going to slice later. You need a carrot. You need a large potato. Now again, when a recipe says large, what does that mean? But you can see that this one is about baseball sized, or if you're American, or maybe cricket ball, a little bit bigger than that. Recipe calls for mushrooms. I don't have any mushrooms today, so I'm going to use another root vegetable. I'm going to use a parsnip, which I've had for ages and I need to use. Very traditionally in pasties would be to use swede. So that's another root vegetable, but you want something like that. But mushrooms would be delicious, and that's what it calls for. This is 2 tablespoons of water. And this is Marmite. I am one of the people who love it. So that's that. It adds a savory taste. If you can't get Marmite or you don't like it, you can leave that out. This is 60 milliliters of milk. And then we've got an egg here for the wash, 125 grams of cheddar cheese grated, and then salt and pepper. And the recipe says to taste, but we'll talk about that when we come to that stage. Now before you start making any kind of recipe that you're going to serve at the table, take my tip and put your serving plates into warm. I put them in the top drawer of the oven while the oven is preheating. And get your oven going, because that is the key to success. First we start with the onion. I'm not going to spend a long time showing you how to chop an onion this week. I've shown you that before, and if you want to see it, you can check out my video on making mushroom risotto, and I show you the steps for that. So as if by magic, I'm going to take this onion and chop it very quickly. Here goes. Et voila, my onion is chopped. I noticed in the recipe it actually calls for an onion thinly sliced, but for making pasties I quite like mine chopped. If you are going to thinly slice them, you literally do that. So rather than making them into little pieces, you make them into slices. But I've gone with that for today, mainly because I didn't read the recipe. Don't forget! Now because my onion and potato are going to be in small dice, I'm going to do a similar thing with the carrot. I'm just going to cut off that end piece, and I'm going to use my bridge hold here and cut the carrot in half, and then turn the flat side down of the carrot down, and that makes it to where it's steady and it doesn't roll around. And then I'm going to slice each half into, I don't know, thirds, and then with those I'm going to take my knife and cut it into little cubes like this. So that is half of my carrot, and then I'll do the other half now. If you've got mushrooms to use for this recipe, you just prepare them like we did for the mushroom risotto last week, but you're going to chop the mushrooms up. Make sure you wipe them off first so that they're clean, but I'm going to do my parsnip in the same way that I did my carrot. So I'm going to just peel it like this, just like the carrot. Any bits that don't look very nice, my parsnip's been sitting around for a while, I'll just get rid of those. And then cut it in half and chop it into dice just like you did with the carrot. My parsnip is all chopped, and so now I'm going to do the same kind of treatment with my potato. I'm going to peel it and cut it into very small dice. I just thought I'd show you how I do my potato. Once I've peeled it, I cut it into slices, quite kind of thick slices, and then each of those I cut into sticks, and then that makes cutting it into dice quite easy to do. So I'm looking for pieces about that big. Next, what I'm going to do is to take my teaspoon of Marmite and dissolve it into my 60 milliliters of milk. which is going to be a bit messy and sticky, but that's okay. Marmite is a yeast extract, and it's very savory, it's very salty, which may be why some people don't like it. If you don't have Marmite, you could probably just add a bit more salt to the recipe, but I think still adding the milk to the recipe is good because it adds a bit of liquid to it. So I'm going to keep stirring that until it's dissolved, and then that gets added to the pan of vegetables. Now what you want to do is to take a large frying pan and put it over medium heat. So if you've got one of those stoves that goes up to 9 or something, put it on about 4 or 5. And then you're going to add your butter to the pan. Remember that 60 grams of butter, and you just let it melt. Once the butter has melted, I'm then going to add my onions to the butter and let them cook until they're soft and translucent. The recipe says until they're beginning to brown, but I think you want to be careful that you don't burn the onions. And so a tip that I've given before is that when you add the onions to the pan, add a bit of salt to them, and that draws the water out. That was about 1/4 teaspoon of salt. It draws the water out so that they don't burn. Top tip! And then take a spoon and stir it in the butter. If you could smell what I smell, you would be really happy. And you let it cook for about 5 minutes. My onions have softened after 5 minutes, and they're giving off that perfume that only onions and butter can do. I'm now going to add my chopped up vegetables, so the potato and the carrot, and if you've used mushrooms, that's what you're going to add, and my parsnip is no longer feeling lonely. And you just add that 2 tablespoons of water to it, and then you give it a stir so that everything's coated in the butter. And then you want to lower the heat a little bit. So again, if you're on a numbered thing, maybe lower it down to 3. And then you're going to put a lid on the pan and just let it cook until everything's softened. So you want it to cook for about 10 minutes, and occasionally take the lid off and give it a stir. Ten minutes is up. I'm going to take the lid off. I have been stirring it since I saw you last, and also, as I bragged about last week, in that 10 minutes I didn't just sit with my feet up, I did all the dishes. So all those messy dishes that I created earlier when I chopped the vegetables are now all clean, and everybody likes me. So you're going to take that mixture of Marmite and milk and egg and stir it in to your vegetables, and you're going to stir it around until it thickens. It's a bit like you're making an omelette. I tasted my mixture, and it was a bit sweet because of the carrots and parsnips that I added, so I did add a bit more salt. And now what I'm going to do is I've turned the heat off, and I'm just going to let that rest and cool. So I'm going to take one of the circles of pastry that I created earlier and put it on my chopping board like that, and I'm going to take about 1/4 of the vegetable mixture and spread it out on the pastry. But don't go all the way to the edges. You want to leave a little bit so that you can seal it. So I've left a little bit clear with no filling in it. That looks like I need to put a bit more carrot in that empty gap. Now, again, the recipe doesn't say this, but I think you need to put some sort of liquid around the edges to make it to where it sticks together, because otherwise the pastry's a bit dry and it won't stick. Here I'm using a mixture of beaten egg and milk, but you could use water if you want to. Once you've brushed it, you then just fold over the other side and press it down with your hands so that it sticks, and that'll keep the filling in nice and tight. Now this is another trick that I like to do, just to neaten it up. I'm going to take a pizza cutter and just go around the edges like this to make it look very professional. You don't have to do that, that's optional, and if you don't have a pizza cutter you could just use a normal knife. And then this isn't very authentic, but it's a way of quickly sealing the edges. I'm just going to go around with the tines of a fork and press down to seal the edges like that. And then finally, I'm going to take my knife and cut a couple of decorative steam holes like that so that the pastry doesn't steam when it's in the oven. And I'm going to transfer this now to my baking tray. So these are my 4 pasties, and before they go in the oven, I'm just going to brush each one with a bit of that egg and milk mixture. And what that does is when it cooks, it gives it a nice shiny brown even surface that looks like those professional pastries that you get when you go to a nice high quality shop. And boy, are these going to be delicious. So that's all 4 of them brushed with egg and milk. If you don't have an egg, again, you can just use milk, or you can leave off the brushing because it doesn't affect the taste so much, but it does make it look very nice indeed. Have a look at this. Who'd have thought you could make your very own vegetable pasties straight from your kitchen that look like this? Absolutely delicious. And there you have it. That's how you make delicious vegetable pasties. And I hope you try this dish at home. I hope that you enjoy it half as much as I do, or even a quarter. Enjoy!